Cyclops, aka Scott Summers, is arguably one of the most hated X-Men characters, yet is also one of the most iconic members on the superhero team. He's one of the original X-Men, often considered the first X-Man. He's led the team, succeeded his mentor, and has been a much needed moral compass at times, despite, pulling some weird crap with Jean Grey in the romantic saga. Yeah. But in recent years, the character has endured many twists and turns, some of which have left fans perplexed and filled with annoyance, while others feel it's been a really interesting dive into his character's complexities. Now, regardless of the hate he's gotten from both readers and characters within the Marvel Universe alike, it's often a mutual feeling. With the characters, we mean. We ain't getting too meta here today, friends. So today we are counting down our picks for the top 10 superheroes who annoy Cyclops the most. Number 10, Namor. Hot-headed and arrogant Namor doesn't have to do much in order to piss off his fellow superheroes. Now, for context, he's a guy who actually got started off in timely comics as a villain of sorts, and is historically considered the first ever anti-hero in mainstream comics. Funny thing is though, Namor isn't hated by Scott. Scott just finds his personality slightly annoying, which is actually pretty hilarious because Namor actually admires Scott. In Uncanny X-Men Volume 2, Issue 11, when the Avengers attempt to take Hope Summers into custody, Cyclops makes a stand with other mutants, and Namor is on his side. Namor has an inner monologue which reads, "This is not my fight. I need not be here. But watch Summers. Understand what is happening. This is a man stating the autonomy of his people. This is a man rejecting the idea that the fears of a mob should govern their destiny. This is a species of 200 declaring war on the United States of America. I admire Scott Summers. I would have his woman, of course, but that's a compliment in its own way." So yeah, smug till the end, Submariner. Namor's just that kind of guy. Doesn't mean he doesn't make for a good asset in battle though, and Cyclops ain't no fool on that front. In at number 9, Professor X. Professor Charles Xavier is not a character that has always grinded Scott's gears. Well, sort of. Really, he lands himself on this list for one particular story arc, when Cyclops, who was technically possessed by the Phoenix Force during the AVX event, looked down at the only real father figure that he ever had, and then chose to embrace the full power of the Phoenix, killing Xavier, with Cyclops becoming the real villain of the AVX arc. Now, while it was later revealed that Xavier survived the events of AVX, many fans felt that this was a pivotal blow, with the beloved professor becoming a martyr of sorts in the story arc, and Cyclops embracing a part of his character that was always a little bit deep down in there. Cyclops hasn't always seen eye to eye with Xavier either, having argued with him on several occasions on how to lead the X-Men, and Xavier's track record of morally dubious decisions, including during the Messiah Complex story arc. He also kicked Xavier out of the X-Mansion at one point, something that was revealed during Grant Morrison's run on the new X-Men. Sometimes you just get mad at your dad, or father figure. And at number 8, Dupe. During Nation X, Dupe teamed up with Wolverine to solve a mystery on Utopia, and then followed Wolverine back when he rebuilt the new Xavier School, which was called the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. That all happened after Wolverine and Cyclops had their fun little falling out. More on that later though. Dupe was always Team Logan, and he even worked his butt off taking out possible threats to the school when he wasn't trying to catch some shut-eye during his day job as the school's info clerk. Now, Dupe may not be human, but my god does he have a soft spot for humanity and life in general. So as you can imagine, particularly because of the Team Logan thing, Dupe slightly rubs Scott Summers the wrong way. If there was a guy who could be capable of hating Dupe, it is Cyclops. In at number 7, the Inhumans. We got a whole darn race over here at this number. During Death of X issue 1, Scott discovers that the Terrigen clouds, the mist that gave the Inhumans' abilities life, have a morbid side effect. They're responsible for a deadly mutant plague. Now, he believes that because the cloud is toxic, the Inhumans can no longer be trusted. So what does good old Scott do? Well, having slowly edged towards becoming a mutant extremist by this point, he ends up recruiting a small army, using Magneto as a distraction, then goes after the Inhumans in Madrid, where he uses alchemy, a mutant with powers to manipulate chemicals, to essentially commit genocide. But he fails, and he's killed by Black Bolt via the Inhumans' vocal abilities. Now he becomes a martyr, but it's later revealed that he was merely a psychic projection created by Emma Frost. Still, Betty can't help but be annoyed that Black Bolt was willing to commit murder just to put an end to him. That sticks with a person. And at number 6, Ugly John. Alright, we will admit that this is a bit of a low blow to Scott, but hey, considering how many times he's flat out been a jerk, like when he provoked Wolverine's PTSD in Uncanny X-Men issue 126 just because he thought he was faking it, dick. His reaction towards this mutant, known as Ugly John, could just be a result of him being annoyed. So, in New X-Men issue 114 from 2001, Ugly John, whose real name is actually Steve, was a mutant that Cyclops and Wolverine saved from a sentinel in Sydney, Australia. He's a mutant with 3 faces. Later he was captured and injured, and then Cyclops kills him to put him out of his misery. Now, hear us out. Cyclops is arguably a guy who doesn't like it when others show signs of weaknesses, read the PTSD moment. Or that time he told a bunch of mutant kids to execute the Hellfire Club. Yeah, dude has a bit of a track record. More on that later though. Anyway, he tells Ugly John to look into his eyes and then kills him, albeit while taking his time to get to the point to do so, which Wolverine, calls him out on. Moving on to number 5, Deadpool. Similar to Namor, it's easy to see why other characters in the Marvel Universe wouldn't be overly keen on having Deadpool around. And when it comes to a stickler like Scott Summers, can bet your butt that he ain't the biggest fan of the merc with a mouth. Exhibit A, Deadpool Volume 2, Issue 15, when Deadpool tries to join the X-Men, to which Cyclops responds with, "I say no. As a matter of fact, I say hell no." Now this is something that's contested by other members of the X-Men later, Wolverine in particular, who felt that leaving Deadpool to his own devices was more dangerous than having him under their watchful eye. Deadpool also outsmarts Cyclops, which results in Summers having to submit to him after the beloved antihero points a gun to his head. And at number 4, Storm. Actually though, during Chris Claremont's run on X-Men, Storm would find herself becoming the leader of the team, taking Cyclops' job. It was like he then became the surrogate white voice of bigots, being all like, "A black woman can't lead the X-Men." Damn it, Cyclops. Jokes aside, this occurred after Madeline Pryor, who turned out to be a clone of Jean Grey, gave birth to their son Nathan. Cyclops was in a position where it was highly debated whether he was still capable of leading the X-Men, and in the meantime Storm had taken over, successfully having guided the team as a field leader in his place. Now seeing how Cyclops was super huffy about the situation, Storm, who had lost her mutant powers at the time, challenged him to a duel in the danger room for the team's leadership. Storm won by outsmarting him, removing his visor, and he conceded, leaving the X-Men yet again, with him moving to Alaska with Madeline and Nathan, secretly hating his new domesticated lifestyle, which would then later not become a secret because he would just end up being a deadbeat dad. In at number 3, Captain America. The 2012 Avengers vs. X-Men crossover event has become one of the most famous Marvel story events over the years, even spawning the adorable parody A-Babies vs. X-Babies, which also revolves around the conflict between Cyclops and Cap when the former steals his teddy bear, Bucky Bear. Aww. The original event though is much more serious, and gives Cyclops one hell of a reason to despise the patriotic hero. It tells the tale of a war between the Avengers and the X-Men after Cable shows up with 24 hours to live thanks to his techno-organic virus, and then tells the X-Men that if the Avengers kill Hope Summers, Scott's daughter, they will end up destroying the Earth because of it. It's revealed that the Phoenix Force is coming for Hope, and the Avengers want to prevent this from happening, whereas Cyclops thinks it needs to happen, and that Hope will be the rebirth of the mutant race, a messiah of sorts. Naturally, being leaders of both of those teams, you can see why Cyclops wouldn't be too fond of Steve Rogers, which resulted in the two clashing quite a bit, to say the least. And at number 2, Wolverine. Finally, the man who gets Cyclops worked up the most, aside from our number 1 point, which we'll get to that. If Logan's cameos in our previous numbers didn't shine enough of a light on their relationship, well, buckle up friends, you're in for a ride. Now for starters, the biggest conflict between these two has always been the rivalry for Jean Grey's affections. Now as soon as Logan joined the X-Men, his brash behavior rubbed Scott the wrong way, and then his obvious interest and attraction in Jean just made that even worse. It's something that, even during the later events in the comics, Scott still holds over Wolverine's head, being the one that Jean's heart truly belongs to. Don't know why though, he's a bit of a dick to her, on multiple occasions. What else though? Well, Wolverine has also opposed Scott during his Schism era, in which Scott's extremist ideologies clashed with what Professor Xavier's X-Men were originally supposed to be about. Really, the whole story kind of becomes about Cyclops and Wolverine having different ideologies, with Wolverine's actually, being more morally correct. To make matters worse, after Cyclops killed Xavier in Avengers vs. X-Men, many of the mutants jumped ship and sided with Wolverine, with many of them holding a grudge against the former leader because of it. I mean, yeah, he was possessed by the Phoenix Force, but still. In addition to that, the two have beaten each other to a pulp multiple times. Now, there is only one superhero character that exists in the Marvel Universe that Scott Summers potentially hates more than Wolverine, and that character is, and at number 1, himself. Yep, we went there. Let's just list off a few reasons why Scott might be super conflicted with himself, aside from some of the things on this list that we've already mentioned. Let's start with Jean Grey. After Jean died, he moved on super fast, shacking up with Colleen Wing. He's been known to drown his sorrows and deal with grief by hooking up with other women, which he's done multiple times. He marries a clone of Jean Grey who looks just like her. That's Madeline Pryor, who he then leaves along with their kid, being a deadbeat dad, to return to the X-Men. Speaking of his troubled love life, he ends up dealing with trauma later on down the line by having therapy sessions with Emma Frost, Jean's arch nemesis, and ends up psychically cheating on Jean with Frost, which Jean manages to walk in on, also psychically. He also made out with Frost on Jean's grave. No shame. During Avengers vs. X-Men, he allowed the Phoenix Force to return, goes full-blown Dark Phoenix, and kills Professor Xavier, all because he believes his daughter is the mutant messiah. He kills a bunch of Skrulls with the Legacy virus during Secret Invasion. And then, perhaps worst of all, during Schism, he becomes a full-blown extremist, and he employs a bunch of teenage mutants in the X-Force, militarizes them, and tells one of them to execute the Hellfire Club. He believes this is the only way. He divides mutant kind, forms a team called the Extinction Team, and is eventually placed in custody after the events of Avengers vs. X-Men, which is when he went all Dark Phoenix. And he's still arrogant as hell. He's worse than Magneto. Although when he is in captivity, he does tell Captain America that he should be held accountable for everything that's happened, and to leave the X-Men alone. But then he goes on about it being a new age for the Avengers and the X-Men, to which Cap responds with, "Don't you dare try to turn this into a win. You waged a war that set friend against friend. You played Russian roulette with the planets." Yeah, he did. He eventually sets out on a quest for redemption after chilling in prison for a while. It's actually more complicated than that, but really when you take a look at his character and all of the crap that he's pulled, and what his original morals and ethics were, you can see why his quest for redemption has been so meaningful, even if he's very stubborn and set in his ways and still kind of a dick occasionally. Alright, there we have it, friends. So, do you love or do you hate Cyclops? Do you think he's been given too much criticism over the past few years? Do you enjoy the direction that his arcs have been going in? Well, let us know in your comments below. If you dug this video, spread the love, hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd for more lists just like this one. We also have a nifty little playlist currently flashing on your screen that you should totally click. In the meantime though, thanks for watching, friends. I'll catch you on the next video.